Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've done a video. I've missed you all so very much, but there is a lot going on and I want to talk to you about a couple of series that we're doing. The Courage series, Courage, Cowardice, Community, Connection that we're going to be finishing up. And also we're going to be talking about our commemorating of the week of the murder of George Floyd. We've already done the introduction. And later on this weekend, we are going to be looking at the police, not just the police in that particular city, but how police departments across the country have been dealing with and also walking back their earlier commitments from last year. We're going to look at companies and firms that capitalized on the Black Spring this time last year and how they've been doing, whether or not they lived up to their lofty promises and goals. And then we're going to take a look at ourselves. How have we done individually? Has your zeal, has your commitment waned? How did you feel about the verdict when the ex-officer was indeed convicted? I can't bring myself to say his name. But how did you feel when he was convicted? Did it feel as though we can put a period on this now? We're quite done. And then we're going to look at what this means for us as a community. There are a lot of you, both active walkers and lurkers, and some that were here and left, and some that have come after what was called the Black Spring and the year of what I call the year of national attention, which was a double-edged sword indeed. How we have walked together as a community has been a microcosm of how white people have walked with Black people and other people of color during this year. There has been such a conflation. It's almost been a perfect storm. This time last year in 2020, we had people newly isolated. We had events that no one could ignore or rationalize or justify. We had intense scrutiny of institutions that a lot of people have thought for a very long time were beyond reproach. And then they had to confront the idea that they were not. We saw companies making sure that they were on the right side of history by putting out statements and making sure that there was a line on their website for Black-owned products. And then we saw ourselves. Whether or not this became something that was enduring or something that was peripheral, something that was nice to do, but not necessary. And besides, phew, aren't we done? In the introduction to the commemoration of George Floyd this week, we talked about that fatigue, and sometimes that displaced anger when people were still forced to, despite their not wanting to at all, still forced to contend with the idea that racism and white supremacy are not acute issues, or more accurately, not only acute issues. There are periods of spikes when something happens, like the murder, that no one could ignore, like the Black Spring of 2020, like Trump and the 4 years of his doubling down and helping white cohorts double down on racism and white supremacy that became so overt that it couldn't be rationalized or explained away or laughed at. And then there were, again, ourselves. Who we are, when there's nothing particularly, put this in quotation marks, exciting going on, speaks to who we are during times of chronicity, not just acute blips, but when it seems like things are just chugging along. That's not when we need to let up on the gas. That's when we need to double down. That's important to remember. And I think that that's something that I have seen a lot in some of my own life that has very little to do with race, but has everything to do with race. Some of you know that I have type 2 diabetes, and I have to be very vigilant about it. I have to be vigilant about taking my pills. I have to be making sure that my soda is sugar-free. I have to make sure that I'm doing enough exercise, not enough to get into a smaller dress size, sadly, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Chris at Rehab United, I am working on it, but enough so that my heart stays good. There's a history of heart disease in my family, and it is very acute right now because my oldest and beloved sister is currently in the hospital with congestive heart failure, and that has been an incredible wake-up call for me. Sometimes it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget that my life is a little bit different than it was 7 years ago when I was first diagnosed, when I could no longer not pay attention. And the way that it showed up 7 years ago was an infection that wouldn't go away. And so I got diagnosed, and then I did the things that I needed to do. And sometimes I had good doctors that blamed everything on what they considered to be a behavioral disease. And so sometimes I was treated with indifference bordering on contempt. But then I had some doctors that saw me as a whole person, not just a brown person with a big belly that deserved what she got. Let's just all tell the truth here. But someone else, someone different, someone more, that talked to me about the idea that, hey, we like what you're doing. We like the woman we see in front of us, and we'd like you to continue annoying us at Kaiser La Mesa for years to come. So this is what you need to do. It is amazing. It is amazing, isn't it? What you're willing to do when you know that you are loved, when you know that the nurse is rooting for you, that the endocrinologist wants you to win, that the lady who takes your blood draw is going, we got this, even though it took 10 sticks to finally find the blood. And so I started treating it more seriously too, not just so that the good doctors and people at Kaiser would shut the heck up, but because guess what? I want to stick around to annoy people, including you. But I also have to know that it is an everyday thing. It's not just when I pick up an infection. I don't get them very often, but when they do, they're annoying. And it's a reminder that my life is different than it was 7 years ago. It's the chronicity. It's the day-to-day. Am I taking the pills every day? Am I watching what I eat every day? Because the acute part is no fun. And I need to remember that. It's the same with our racial justice work. There was something that happened a couple of years ago. I came in with perfect, and I do mean perfect, blood work. Oh my gosh, I was like 2 points away from almost having like the same A1C levels that normal people have. And you would think that I would have gone, oh wow, it's working. I need to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. Nope, I didn't. Not for a while. Not for a while. I rediscovered Chips Ahoy's in copious amounts. I decided that I wanted real Pepsi again. I decided that it was a lot easier to sit and research on the couch and, believe it or not, only pick up the mail when I'm driving down the hill instead of walking down the hill to get the mail and walking back up that steep hill again. And then my A1C went right back up. Chronicity. I am never going to not have type 2 diabetes. It will be a constant companion of mine for the rest of my life. You, individually, and we, collectively, will never, ever be rid of the scourge of racism and white supremacy. even when it seems like we can take a breather. Like with the trial of the officer whose name I simply cannot say, who brutally murdered with a boot on the street Mr. George Floyd. In fact, the chronicity of racism and white supremacy was brought into sharp relief on the day of the conviction that everybody thought was a one and done. A young black woman was murdered by the police that exact same day. Chronicity. It's sobering. It's sobering. Every day I have to reach for my insulin pen or take my pills or say, Diet Coke, please. I am reminded of what my life is like, and I can't go back. I can't go back. Every time I am tempted to wait until I drive down the hill to get the mail, I am reminded that of my immediate family, I am the only one so far without serious heart disease. There are two things that people do when they are faced with something that is never going to go away, that will not only necessitate a change in behavior, but a change in attitude and a change in conviction and a change in priorities. And that's to just ignore it and just keep doing what you're doing and just kind of hope that, things will resolve on its own. Or you accept the diagnosis. You accept the diagnosis of diabetes. You accept the diagnosis or the prognosis that you're going to have to be a little bit more careful than other people, Lace, because if you look at your dad and your mom and both sisters, it's coming after you if you're not careful. You will never not have that predilection. And then you just roll over and just wait to die. It's nothing I do is going to work. I have diabetes now. Game over. I may as well eat the entire bag of Chunky Chips Ahoy. I may as well drink the full flavored Pepsi. There's nothing I can do that's going to end this. It will always be a part of my life. Well, then why even try? Why even try? And you just sit there and you watch Netflix and you eat the Chunky Chips Ahoy and you wait for your last breath. Or another infection. In the work of racial justice, another infection means another death, either literally or metaphorically. It means another person who is not living the full life that they are entitled to and that the universe intended to, but for white supremacy and racism. And that leads us to the third choice, acceptance of the chronicity, a refusal to bend to the acute, which means we need to be diligent every day. Every day. Some of you have been, and I am so grateful for that. Some of you have not only been faithful here, but have taken what you've learned and taken it outside. It's been terrific. It's been an amazing thing to watch. Some of you have dialed down on the throttle a little bit, either in terms of active participation or participation at all. Some of you have decided that now that it's done, this whole racism as an economic construct thing just sounds like one more way to rid you of your hard-earned dollars. Well, guess what it is? That was true when the officer of the state held his boot on George Floyd's neck. That was every bit an economic decision as it was a social and a criminal one. The police that at first allowed the perpetrator, whose name I will not mention, to hide behind their skirts, knew that it was an economic decision. And in the months since have remembered just how much of an economic decision it was, as they have pulled back and dialed back and walked back on their promises of taking deep dives and deep interrogations into their processes and practices. Corporations, for whom racism and white supremacy are most emphatically economic constructs, have decided that, if in the campaign you see one interracial couple, then it's deal on. But nobody pull back the curtain and look at their hiring practices. Nobody pull back the curtain and look at healthcare disparities. Nobody pull back the curtain and look at housing trends. Nobody pull back the curtain and look at where things are still dumped. And we need to look at ourselves. Are we holding back the curtain and looking at what we were forced to look at this time last year? Or did we quietly close the curtain back, send $5 or $10 once or twice a quarter and call it a day? Breathe a huge sigh of relief that justice was served a little over a month ago. And keep it moving without looking at the choices and the priorities and the overall gestalt of our individual lives. Let's go back to diabetes for a moment. Diabetes is not a whole lot of fun. In the same way that I am confronted with my baldness every single day, when I have to put on a wig and again at night when I take off the wig, I am confronted with my diabetes every single day. When I take the insulin out of the refrigerator, when I draw it up, when I stick it in my belly, when I remember the metformin and the glucopage, I think it's called, those pills that I have to eat every time I eat. I'm reminded when I get an eye exam and the guy goes, "Good news, the diabetes has only hurt your eyes so much, but don't worry, you're good and you'll be good for years." But it's still there. So what I can do is lessen and mitigate the harm that diabetes takes on my body, but does not necessarily have to take on my psyche. I can lessen and mitigate the harm and thereby lessen and mitigate the inevitability of my contracting heart disease by walking to the mailbox and maybe even a little bit beyond. Tarbox is a very long street. To walk all the way to the end of Tarbox from my house to 69th, all the way back to my home, at a brisk pace is a good 15 minutes. If I do it twice, that's half an hour. And then I get the mail, and then I look at that hill that I have to go back up, and I do it anyway. You know why? Because the only way I'm going to continue to be annoying is if I continue to wake up. Wake up. Wake up. I cannot be lulled back into complacency about the life I no longer have from 7 years ago. That life is over. Just like 10 years ago when I lost my hair. That life is over. Who am I going to be now, given the current realities? And that's the exact same question I ask of police. That's the same question I ask of corporations. It's the same question I ask of you. And it's the same question that I ask for us as a community of Lace on Race. Who are we going to be, given what we can no longer ignore? I know. Most of your friends, even liberal and progressive ones, sometimes even radical ones, just, phew, that's over. Now we can go back to wondering whether or not Firefly Lane is going to get re-upped for a second season. By the way, it is. It is. No one's more excited about that than I am. It absolutely is. And we can forget. But we need to remember. I need to remember. I miss enough days of the shots and the pills, and I get an infection. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not I had other things going on. It didn't matter whether or not I just, Laura wants this by 4, so I have to do it. Nope, I need to take the 20 seconds, get the pills, take the pills, eat the sandwich, go back to it. So do you. You will never not be a racist and a white supremacist, and I don't care what color you are, because racism and white supremacy is in the soup we live in. It is inculcated by socialization into the marrow of our bones. That's why a lot of people leave Lace on Race, because they think that they come here and then they can stop being a racist, and they are not pleased when I tell them that it is a chronic disease. That it will never, ever be a one and done, and that you will have to look at every single aspect of your life. Whether or not you are going to go down the hill and walk a little bit down Tarbox and come back and trudge back up the hill every single day. Whether or not you're going to choose a Honeycrisp apple over a Chunky Chips Ahoy. Whether or not you're going to pay the trainer to make sure that you stay healthy enough, so that your heart stays healthy enough, so that you can walk up and down the hill. It is hard sometimes being the bearer of bad news. Yeah, you're a racist. You were a racist yesterday. You're a racist while I'm talking to you, and you'll be a racist tomorrow. And then they hear that and they shut down and they don't hear the good news. You can live a full life as a recovering racist, as a recovering white supremacist, as a recovering diabetic. Diabetes does not make you just sit down and roll into a ball in the fetal position and wait for your heart to give out. Wait to go blind. Wait to lose a finger. That is not an inevitability. And it does not have to be an inevitability for you and your chronic and unrelenting racism that you can lessen and mitigate so that you can be, in turn, less of a pathogen, less of an infection to the Black and brown people that you say you stand with and for. I've got a lot of things to write. My staff and leadership team are stern taskmasters. You would think that now that I was executive director, with all of the gravitas that implies, that they would be asking less of me. After all, shouldn't I just be sitting back and eating bonbons? Sugar-free bonbons. Sugar-free bonbons. I get them. They're Whitman. They're really good. They are not the same. Oh, I'm not going to lie to you. But they're really good. But actually, I don't do that. My staff and leadership team love me enough to keep me on my toes. We did this. We're waiting for you, Lace. We're waiting for you. Do your part. Do your part so that we can keep walking. The benefit, the crucialness of keeping walking is so that other people can walk with you. This is not a solo exercise. My name is on this joint. But I don't do this alone, and you don't have to do it alone either. So as we walk together in our chronicity, there is not an inevitability that we will lay down and die. Expect more from me this weekend. I love being back and talking to you. I hope that doing it on the phone will be better than doing it on the laptop, and we'll be able to do these more and more, sometimes in different locales. Me in the supermarket. Me at the beach. Me at the park. Me sitting in the truck. But you know what I'm talking about. Wow, I've missed you guys. I love you. Keep walking and past the mailbox because the job is not done. I'm going to hang up on you, get my pills, eat a sandwich, and continue doing the work that I was called to do.